Hi everyone, how's it going? I hope 2022 has been going well for you guys, and well, I have a bit of a New Year's resolution. That being that I want to go back and start doing comics that are a little bit out of the mainstream or a bit out of my element. It was kind of the reason I started these reviews, to shed some light on comics that are either underrated or dive into topics that I don't see many people dive into in the medium, or maybe in a genre that I myself don't really discuss all that much. Now, for today, we're going to be talking about the latter. And what would this element that I don't usually dive into is? Well, simple, romance. No joke. A lot of people that know me are usually under the belief that I hate the genre. But truth be told, some of my favorite stories are romances. It's just that there aren't that many romances that have been able to really hook me in. Either because the story just kind of comes off as bland to me, or have a concept that is really interesting but has a very poor execution. Not every story can be the shape of water. I mean, Del Toro was able to make the romance between a janitor and a fish man be very emotional. It won an Oscar for a reason. But we're not here to talk about movies, we're here to talk about comics. And this comic definitely got me hooked. That being Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. Now, longtime viewers are probably asking, wait Biz, you crazy nutcase that haunts my nightmares, what could this possibly have in common with your last review of Batman the Shadow? Well, the answer is simple, but actually a major factor in Lore Olympus. That being winter. Yes, a slim connection, I know, but my call. As for how winter comes into play, I hand you guys to my friend, today's co-star, and probably an even bigger fan of this series than me, NoEnya.
Hey Bizarro guy, I am looking forward to talk about Lore Olympus. But first, we might as well dove into the Greek mythology itself. Hades is the Greek lord of the underworld. However, being the god of the underworld can be a pretty lonely domain. So Hades decided to take one trip to the world above. There, he meets Persephone, the daughter of Demeter, the goddess of spring. Hades fell in love with her and he wanted to marry her. But there's one little catch. Asking Demeter's for Persephone's hand in marriage is a lot easier said than done. So what Hades does is that he turns to the one person who knows about love and marriage. Zeus! Because of course you get romantic advice from Zeus. So, decided to help his bro, and by help I mean this is gonna end stupidly badly. So Persephone was alone, picking flowers in the field, when the ground suddenly split itself open. Hades took Persephone and they both disappear. Demeter was frantic about her daughter's disappearance, even to go so far to turn Persephone's maidens into sirens who lost Persephone in the first place. For a while, everything like fruits, vegetation, and grain on the earth died because Demeter neglected her duties, causing the mortals to die of starvation. On her journey, Demeter met Hecate, and then they both went to Helios for help. While he didn't say who did it, he did hint who got involved. Zeus. So when Demeter went to Zeus, she wasn't pleased. So Demeter demanded Zeus to get her daughter out of the underworld, or else she'll keep neglecting on her duties and let the world die. So Zeus sends in Hermes to get Persephone. In the underworld, Hermes finds Persephone to be okay. In fact, Persephone was upset with the situation, but Hades did everything in his power to make her happy, and showing Persephone that she can be an equal ruler of the underworld. For that, Persephone warmed up to Hades and returned his feelings. But when Persephone was told that she had to leave, Hades, not wanting to let her go, gave Persephone a pomegranate. Persephone, for her part, hasn't eaten anything during her stay. As per rule, Persephone ate food of the underworld, thus has to return to the underworld. This causes more problems, so Zeus couldn't handle this situation himself again, so he turns to his mother Rhea for advice. Rhea comes up with a compromise. Persephone will spend 6 months with her mother and 6 months with Hades all year round. So when Persephone leaves her mother and goes back to Hades, the world will fall into winter and fall. Then when Persephone returns to her mother, the world will become spring and summer, thus the creation of the 4 seasons.
And now with that, on to the review. Warning, spoilers. We open to our cast of characters getting ready for the Panathenea,
a festival that in both history and mythology was celebrated in ancient Athens that would have people pay tribute to the gods, with a culmination of music, athletics, and ceremonies.
And though the humans of this series probably still celebrate it the same way that, they actually celebrated in history and mythology, the gods in this story, well, it's a little bit more swanky.
Hades is talking to his on-again, off-again girlfriend, Minth, who, despite promising to be his date to the event, has decided not to, and says she doesn't feel like being seen with him.
So yeah, their relationship isn't clearly as toxic as Chernobyl on an average Tuesday.
Hera, while expressing how much she's happy won't have to pretend to get along with Minth, still shows off her acting skills by giving the illusion her husband isn't notoriously known for sleeping with anything that moves.
So at least 50% of, most spouses of politicians.
And finally, we have Persephone, who isn't really comfortable going to the event, but her roommate, Artemis, talks her into coming, which doesn't go great since she ends up being one of the people caught in the wrath of the god Poseidon, who summons mighty winds when finding out Zeus invited King Odysseus from the Odyssey because he thinks it would be funny. But as Zeus has his laugh, it is at that moment Hades sees the goddess of spring and is immediately smitten.
I should also clarify that despite the fact that in most mythologies and depictions of the tale, they usually have Persephone's father be Zeus. No, they're not related in this version. In fact, several gods in the story who are usually related to Zeus in some way have either been, ignored, or they just retcon it that no, Zeus isn't actually related to them by blood. There are some that are still related, like, Ares is still his son, and later we do find out that, Artemis is also the daughter of Zeus. But, don't worry, they're not related.
Anyway, Hades even goes as far in saying that she puts Aphrodite to shame, not realizing Aphrodite was in earshot.
And if you know your mythology and know what happens when people say that she's not the most beautiful, well, you know where this is going.
She calls upon, and by that I mean she texts her son, Eros, to humiliate her. He's reluctant, but his mother reminds him that she has someone important to him, more on that later. Placing her in Hades' car, Aphrodite expects to both humiliate Persephone, thinking Hades will believe that she is some drunk who will disgust him and he will lose interest, while Persephone will think Hades is a creep who dragged her into his car, meaning she won't be interested in him.
The goddess of love, ladies and gentlemen.
Unfortunately for Aphrodite, that doesn't seem to be the case, as Hades finds Persephone as he makes it home, but instead of judging her or doing anything skeevy, he actually just puts her in a room so she can rest, and leaves her alone. After an intense dream about her mother, Demeter, Persephone wakes, and after meeting one of Hades' dogs, Cerberus, the two finally get to know each other, and the best way to describe their interaction is, well, adorable.
Yeah, I know that adorable isn't really a professional thing to say, but come on, that's what it is, and let's face it, I've already proven that I am a work in progress when it comes to professionalism.
Unfortunately, the conversation wouldn't last since Zeus comes calling for a family brunch. The two part ways on good terms, but unfortunately, TMZ proves to truly have been something made in the underworld because word gets out of the god of the underworld being seen with the goddess of spring. Rumors and lies are spread, and both their friends and families start assuming and judging. Meanwhile, as Persephone tries to assure Artemis that nothing happened at Hades' place, they get a visit from Eros, apologizing and hoping for forgiveness. The long and short of it is that they're able to patch things up and even have some fun together. As the story progresses, we continue to see the ever-growing cast which is expected when going to the Greek myth. Characters like Hermes, the messenger of the gods, and close friend with Persephone, and his roommate, the god of the sun and archery, Apollo.
Yeah, heads up. He's a dirtbag.
But before that, we were also introduced to Psyche, Eros' love and the reason he assisted his mother on her plan to humiliate Persephone. What happened to lead to that? What secrets will be revealed? And of course, will Persephone and Hades be able to be together? Now, if you've been paying attention in the last 9 minutes, you probably already know the answer, but definitely check out this book. The series has a great start. Smythe did a fantastic job blending Greek myth with a modern aesthetic, which of course has been done countless times in other stories and media, but still, it's able to feel unique. unique. As for how she writes romance, gotta say, despite the fact that this deals with gods, titans, and a crapload of other Greek myths, it's pretty grounded when it comes to relationships. I said before, Persephone and Hades' relationship starts off pretty freaking adorable, but also pretty natural. Yeah, sure, Hades is immediately smitten with her when he first sees her, but when it comes to Persephone, no, she actually has to get to know Hades. And though there's an obvious attraction, she knows that, well, he's in a relationship already, and, well, she doesn't want to complicate things for him since she generally thinks he's a nice guy. While Hades, who again is clearly in love with her, doesn't do anything because, well, he's in a relationship, and unlike his brothers, he's not really a fan of cheating. But whatever, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll discuss that more when it comes to characters, but yes, Smythe handles romance pretty damn well. She even adds elements that, honestly, I think would be eye rollers, but surprisingly works out. But again, I'll discuss that later.
The mythology of Hades and Persephone is one of my favorites. Sure, it's not perfect, but it was an early form of gothic fairy tale fantasy romance that sought a lot of influence to this day in books, TV series, animation, video games, musicals, and of course comics. For better, or we don't speak about it again. But Lore Olympus is one of the very best adaptations we have. To criticize one of the things, it can be the world building. Sure, it can be confusing to know the time. From going to modernized world and we see the characters go to the mortal realms where it's in fact ancient Greek times. But for a while you start to get used to it and you later understand that the world of Olympus, the underworld, are in fact more moderate and more developing than the mortal realm. Here are my thoughts on the characters. Persephone in Lore Olympus is new to Olympus. All her life she was raised by Demeter in the mortal realm. From the beginning of the story, she was confused by her new surroundings at the party. Afraid if something might go wrong, she might go back to her mother and lose her newfound independence. Persephone may be shy at first, but when we later see her interactions with other characters, she is confident, clever, and a kind-hearted person.
It kind of shows that despite some seeing her as a mama's girl, she is far more mature than they give her credit for.
Hades in Lore Olympus rules the underworld like a corporate business. Hades, in his romantic life, always remind me a bit like Robert from Company. He wants a queen by his side, but doesn't understand the feelings of wanting something by your side romantically, opposed to having a title. He's currently dating Minthy to this dismay of his families that even Zeus can say it's an unhealthy relationship. Being with Minthy, it feels nothing. It just feels like his relation was just slapped on the title. But when Hades meets Persephone, it feels nice to Hades. Persephone is kind to him. She never felt intimidated by his title, and not even once. My favorite moment is when he starts geeking out about his dogs. Oh, they are so cute.
Treating Hades like a businessman was very clever, since the fact is that he's also the god of wealth, which a lot of people tend to glance over. Besides the kindness he shows Persephone, he also seems to be someone who is willing to help anyone get a second chance. Case in point, him and his brothers go to a club that turns out that they're banned for. Zeus, because he was, being Zeus, Poseidon for breaking a tank full of mermaids, and Hades, he actually made one of the girls quit her job because he convinced her that her talents were better elsewhere, and he gave her a job. He's also more willing to show humility, despite the fact that he's part of the big three. There's a scene with Hera, and it definitely paints a picture of their relationship as both in-laws and friends.
Zeus in Lore Olympus is still the douche we know in Greek mythology, but he also cares about his brother. And despite being the king of the gods, it's been hinted that he's not the perfect leader as everybody thinks.
Agreed. When first reading, I was thinking Zeus would be the main antagonist, but until later in the series, he's more or less a comic relief. He tries to be intimidating, but it's very clear that by this point, most people, including his wife, are pretty sick of his crap, but forces themselves to humor him.
Hera in Lore Olympus is one of my most favorite characters in the series. In a lot of pop culture, they always portrayed Hera as this vengeful, harpy wife as they do in mythology. This one, we get another side to her. And despite she's classy, smart, and a bad bitch in a good way. Hera is also shown to have a softer side when she is empathetic to those who are closest to her.
She's kind of a second mother to Persephone. She's very protective over her, especially when she thinks that Hades is only pursuing her for sexual conquest, and nothing more. In the scene I mentioned before discussing Hades, it's written in a way where you get this sense of betrayal, since she does truly consider Hades a friend. Of course, she realizes the truth, which is great, because as the series progresses, they're gonna need all the help they can get.
Artemis is a good character in Lore Olympus, who is protective of Persephone because they are both members of TOGEM, the goddess of eternal maidenhood. But her flaw is that she always lets her guard down, particularly around her brother. Him, we'll get to later. Eros is a sweetheart. At first, you don't want to forgive him for what he did to Persephone and Psyche, but he later makes up an effort. His mythology was also combined with Hades and Persephone's story, and I've already told you the details on Hades and Persephone, but to make it short with Eros and Psyche, think of Beauty and the Beast and Snow White combined together.
We spend a lot of time with the two's backstory, but it's nicely paced, and it also leads to the tropes that I mentioned before. Now, usually, like when they do something ridiculous and stupid, you'll roll your eyes and wonder why they would do this. Well, in here, there are some good explanations, and that is, they all have secrets. In fact, every character in this series has a deep secret that they don't want to share with the other, and frightened on what the other will think of them once they know the truth. Since, without spoiling anything, the truth behind these secrets, they're really tough pills to swallow. It's only until that they let the secrets out that things can get better for them, and it's a pretty good message.
Aphrodite is a bitch, and I mean a petty ass bitch. She is insanely vain. If a mortal or any goddess is compared to her own looks, she goes through any length to just destroy them or humiliate them by any chance. And I gotta say, this is actually the accurate version of her. Yeah, in all pop culture, they always portrayed her as nice and shit, but Aphrodite in Lore Olympus, she's actually the closest thing to the real thing. If you don't believe me about Aphrodite, then look up Aphrodite's worst deeds. And trust me, they are a petty ass mess.
Started a war that brought her husband to shame. Hermes is Apollo's roommate, but by the grace of the gods, he is not a total scumbag. He is a pretty close friend with Persephone, as I mentioned before, and is also very laid back. He kinda comes off as very brotherly with her. As the series progresses, he becomes a fan favorite for reasons we'll let you see for yourselves, for now.
And last, and the very least that I saved later, is Apollo. Never in my life I despise a fictional character so hard. To get this out of the way, to anyone who suffered trauma and assault or any kind, please note, I want you to skip episode 24, okay? Any of you guys suffer that pain, please skip episode 24, but I will make this short. Please note that what Apollo did was hugely despicable. And I pray that one day, I get to see his ass handed by Hades and turned into dog chow. But not only that, I actually wish Apollo would get his ass kicked by Kratos, Xena, Wonder Woman, and of course, Gore the God Butcher. Trust me, I wish I had my own God-killing powers to go after this bitch.
He likes to be seen as the nice guy, and pretty much from the beginning is forcing Persephone into this relationship. I cannot stretch how unsettling these scenes are. You just want to punch this purple bastard. Seriously, you just want him to suffer.
Okay, here are some positive thoughts I have from Lore Olympus. Positive thoughts. I would like to say it's the artwork. I am in love with the Lore Olympus artwork. It's what even got me into the series even more, is the artwork. It reminds me so much about Mary Blair. And if you do not know who Mary Blair is, she is a Disney artist who is responsible for the concept art during Disney's Silver Age. It also has some manga influence to it because the character expressions and poses. Honestly, if you combine Mary Blair and manga, those mix very well. And I also like the background art too.
Much like the writing, a great blend of modern and ancient Greek. And the character designs are pretty good. Starting off simplistic, but as they get more serious, greater detail is added. Then there's the use of the colors. Damn, it is gorgeous. Much like the two leads being the perfect blend of dark and light, they are done in a way that makes it easy to switch up the tone in a natural way, while also being just amazing to look at.
What's worth mentioning about about the book is a deleted scene that I agreed why the editors wanted out of the comic, but it's also worth looking into if you're a fan of the series. So I recommend getting this book and also checking the rest on the series on Webtoon. As of this day of the recording, season 2 ended mid-season, and we gotta wait 4 months for it to return. 4 freaking months that are gonna kill me already. So please, I highly recommend you check it out.
Couldn't agree more.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe, and thanks to NoEnya for joining my video. Later.
See you guys!
And before anyone brings it up, yes, we are aware of the Lore Olympus animated series in the works. Yes, we're looking forward to it. And man, oh man, I hope it's more like Tower of God and not like God of High School. Seriously, what the hell was that?